Good morning, IEEE-USA CVD participants. Thanks for joining us this morning or whenever you watch the recording. I'm Russ Harrison, Director of Government Relations for IEEE-USA. This is our last minute CVD updates for our sessions. As you should have noted by now, meetings are getting scheduled very quickly, as they generally do towards the end. We have a few meetings tomorrow on Tuesday, a tremendous number of meetings on Wednesday the 6th. And then we have a few meetings scattered. One of our meetings has actually been scheduled for the end of May. One legislator asked that she have a meeting directly with us, but asked that we push it off until next month. And we said, absolutely, Congresswoman, we're happy to do it. And so that is a good thing. It'll be a good reminder to Congress of what we did today and tomorrow. So what we're going to do today is just touch on a few things that have kind of moved around a little bit, not anything significant that's changed since our last update, but some last minute things, give you an opportunity to ask questions, and then send you on your way. If you do have questions, please put them in the comment section on your screen and we'll rotate to them at the end. Let's get going. Biggest thing for today, if you have not already done so, remember to open up your digital toolbox from Soapbox. That should be an email from Miguel Torres. If you do not open that app, that digital tool, it's not technically an app. If you don't open that, click on the link by today, we're going to have to look into canceling your meetings because we can't be sure that you're going to make them. So if you've not already done so, please open that quickly. Soapbox has been calling people that have not opened the digital tool. And if we can't reach you, like I said, by the end of the day today, we're going to have to look into canceling your meetings if you're the only participant. If you have a problem with that, please get in touch with me or reach out to Miguel at torres@soapboxconsulting.com immediately. Thank you. Hopefully, you have all talked to your team or are about to talk to your team before tomorrow. If you have any problems reaching team members or any sort of conflicts within your team, please let me know. Most important, well, not most importantly, but very importantly, you should, within your digital tool, have the Excel spreadsheet that has all of the numbers of IEEE members from your congressional district or state. Remember to mention those numbers at some point during your meeting. Don't need to dwell on them, but we want to make sure your legislator knows exactly how many people like you are in the district. To a politician, that's kind of one of the most important things to pull out of the meeting. So it's easy to do during introductions. Hey, I'm Steve Smith with IEEE-USA. I live in wherever, Missouri. IEEE has 350 members in your district, and we're here today to talk about whatever it is you're talking about. Just dropping it in is fine. The staff will almost certainly write it down. But if you have problems with that spreadsheet, please let me know. Participants from Washington State and Wisconsin somehow got left off that list. We're going to be updating the list with Soapbox right after this talk, but you should also have received those numbers by email from me on Friday. So again, our message overview. Congress needs to make strategic investments in technology. We're focusing on the USICA Competes bill, we'll talk about in a second, and the president's budget request. Maybe not quite as much as the president's request as we had thought. Quick updates on USICA Competes. Conferees have not yet been named. In our last update, I told you we expected the conferees to be named at the end of last week. They were not, so we do not know who will be actually doing the negotiating. Good news on that is it means the negotiations won't be done before your meetings, so we still have plenty of time to influence those negotiations. We expect that the leaders of both chambers will be among the conferees, and the primary negotiation will actually be between Senator Schumer and Congresswoman Pelosi. There will be a few additional members as well as the leaders. We don't know who those are yet. We will send you the list as soon as we have it. That could be this afternoon. It could be Wednesday morning. It could be next week or even the end of April. That's just how these things go. The important thing to remember is that whoever you're meeting with will have a chance to have a say in what that final bill is. They need to contact the leaders of their chamber to let them know what their priorities are. But there is still plenty of time to get that input in. And even once the negotiations start, there'll be plenty of time to influence them. So again, you guys are going to be meeting with Congress pretty much exactly the best time to play a role in those negotiations. We will, as I said, we'll get to the list as soon as we have it. Well, as soon as there is a list, we'll get it out to you. Okay, the big update for today, however, is on the president's budget request and the FY 2023 budget numbers. As I mentioned, the president released his budget just before our last update. And so I didn't have good numbers for you, and I still really don't. Typically, when the president sends his budget request up to Congress, there's three basic parts to it. There is the 10-page executive summary, which is it's political. It's a bunch of fluffy language about how the president's budget will fix all the problems of the world, and these are the highlights that the president wants you to talk about. That executive summary is typically the only thing that is read by the press, and it's really designed for public consumption. Sometimes it's useful for us, but usually our budget numbers are much bigger than that and much more detailed than that, and so that doesn't help us. Then there's the hardcore budget. These are the actuarial tables, the kind of CPA language explaining how money is going to be moved around, and the big picture numbers, not just the big agency numbers, but the big department numbers underneath of it. That is important, but it's really, really dense. And so it's hard to really work with. It's important, but not for our purposes. Then there's the third section where the administration breaks down certain budget areas where they'll go into a lot of detail on the NASA budget, but not just in terms of numbers, also in terms of narrative, what the priorities are, what they want the agencies to do, and how they want the agencies to move forward. That section of the budget is usually where IEEE-USA focuses most of its attention. Interestingly, the president hasn't released the first or the third parts of the budget yet. Now, it's normal. I mean, the FY 2022 budget was just done a couple weeks ago. I'm frankly amazed that they got out what they got out. The problem is what they released is actually really hard to work with. For example, IEEE-USA wants to talk about cybersecurity and wants the government to invest in cybersecurity technology, systems, and research. The problem is the cybersecurity budget is blasted all over the federal budget, what we have of it at least. And pulling it together into one number is next to impossible. And so we can't talk about the Biden administration's investments in cybersecurity because it's hard to figure out exactly what they're doing. There are pots of money all over the budget for cybersecurity, but the details are a little hard to detect. Apologize for the noise behind me. We're having some work done on our kitchen, and I am working from home today. So what are we going to do about this? Well, we have a one-pager that we're going to send to you that's going to give you the highlights of what IEEE-USA is talking about in the budget, specifically DoD, R&D, which we're going to focus on because it was almost cut in last year's budget. Now, the president's budget request this year was generally pretty good, with one major exception. For whatever reason, the Biden administration has asked for a 30%, 32% technical reduction in DoD cybersecurity research spending. That's probably not real. There's probably not something we're understanding in the budget numbers, or the president is planning to play games, which all presidents play, which is to cut parts of the budget that the president knows Congress is going to restore as a way of keeping the overall budget numbers down. Either way, we are going to mention to Congress that the DoD, the DoD, sorry about that, but the agency most responsible for national security is in fact going to invest in cybersecurity technology. We're going to focus on NIST, especially the facilities budget, which we always focus on because it tends to get overlooked. We're going to talk about, not DoD research, DOE research. I finished these slides about 10 minutes before talking because that's how updated I wanted them. DOE, Office of Research, Office of Science, but also research and energy systems, energy actually programs within the Department of Energy are a big deal. And lastly, NASA and the NASA budget. NASA budget is particularly interesting because it is being impacted by the situation in the Ukraine. The United States, probably unwisely, but still relied on Russia to do a large amount of space launches and to get resources up to the International Space Station and some other places. The United States and Europe and pretty much the rest of the world that's involved in space are pivoting away from Russia, not too surprisingly, but that's going to have an impact on the NASA budget, and we need to understand what that is. We want to make sure NASA can continue to do what it was going to do, even if it has to now spend some money it was planning on saving by working through Russia. The big question, however, with the 2023 budget involves inflation. Typically, IEEE-USA asks, within our research budget in particular, for 4% real growth in the research budgets. Now, 4% real growth means you take the inflation rate and add 4% to it. When inflation is, 1 to 2%, that made sense. We're effectively asking for a 6% increase, which is not that unreasonable. Then we take something a little less than that. But the point is, we focus on assuming an increase for inflation and asking for something on top of it. The problem is inflation is running now somewhere between 6 and 7%, and we expect it to get higher. Well, 4% real growth with a 7% inflation rate is an 11% increase in the budget, which doesn't sound terribly reasonable. There are some groups that are already asking for an 18% increase in their budget, assuming an inflation rate that starts to approach 9%. That's an awful lot of money. And the question is, what does congressional staff consider to be reasonable? IEEE-USA, particularly my colleague Aline McNall that handles these issues, is talking to congressional staff to figure out what sort of increase we can ask and still be considered, not out of our minds. If we go in, excuse me, if we go in and ask Congress for an 18% budget increase, they're going to just say, no, and move on. But we don't know how much we can get away with asking. The fact is, budgeting in an inflationary environment is very difficult. Congress has to make some decisions on what they expect inflation to be. And frankly, a 7% inflationary increase in programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid add up to massively big numbers, which makes the rest of the budget very hard. This is starting to look like the kind of budget environment that we have been preparing for the last couple of years. A budget environment where increases are hard to find and cuts start to look very attractive to some members of Congress. We've positioned ourselves, and frankly, USICA and competes are part of this project to position ourselves to defend our budgets in a difficult budget environment, and in fact, be able to secure increases for some of our key budget areas. Your work on CVD is critical in this fight, making sure Congress understands that their voters are watching these budgets and consider these relatively small parts of the budget need to be defended. But right now, we don't yet know how to talk about this. And so our request to you is to still talk about 4% real growth. Understand that the staff you're going to be talking with doesn't quite know what to do with that request yet, which is why overall we're de-emphasizing discussing the budget, because it's kind of in flux at the moment and kind of hard to talk about. Which brings us to your additional briefing papers. There will be a couple additional pieces, documents added to the digital tool that should show up in the next day or so. I'm going to be sending them to Soapbox right after this briefing. We'd sent out a letter on the small business loan program, the SBIR and STTR programs. Both of those programs need to be reauthorized this year. James Savage, my colleague here at IEEE-USA, is working with the small business committees on that. And we expect Congress is going to bring that up sometime probably later this spring. They haven't started it yet, though. We sent you the letter, which IEEE-USA is going to be sending up to the Hill shortly after the CVD. We didn't want to confuse things. So we're going to wait till later this week to send it up. But we do have some entrepreneurs participating in the CVD. We wanted you to see what was coming. And if this is a big deal to you and to your company, you should absolutely mention it in your meetings. Congress likes talking to entrepreneurs. Every legislator wants more small businesses in their district, so they love you. But if you're not involved in the small business community, if you want to talk about other things, you don't need to bring it up. But the letter is there in your virtual tool if you want it. Same thing with the FY 2023 budget. Aline McNall, my colleague, is working on our ask sheet to Congress, which will look a lot like the sheet that you have in your digital tool. The one we send up will be more detailed. If anybody wants to see it, I can send it to you. But we wanted you to get the basic budget numbers just in case it comes up. I will also be sending out a one-page sheet on artificial intelligence. Congress is doing a lot of work on AI, kind of behind the scenes at the moment. IEEE-USA is right in the middle of it, and I wanted you all to know what we're up to. But unless you're in that world, I don't think it should come up in your meetings. A couple reminders on your meetings. And again, if you have questions or comments, I see we have a bunch. We'll get to them in just a second. Remember your video meeting etiquette. Remember to, not monopolize the conversation. Make sure everybody, when you can, have time to talk. And I say when you can because we have 50-something participants from California, and not all of you are going to be able to talk in those Senate meetings, though you should in your House meetings. But when possible, make sure everybody talks, but give the staff time to interrupt you and opportunity to ask questions. Make sure you always identify yourself when speaking, even if you've spoken multiple times, because sometimes it's hard for the staff to tell who's talking. Do not record the sessions. Again, this is like the only way you can screw this up. But if you want to grab a screen capture, get a picture of everybody that's on with your legislator, that's fine as long as you ask in advance. And if the staff seems uncomfortable with this, don't do it. We like getting the screen captures because it looks cool and we can publicize next year's CVD with it. But we certainly don't want to irritate a staff member in the process. So if the staff isn't comfortable, don't do it. And most importantly, keep it short. Keep your talking short. You got 10, 15 minutes, use it. But make sure you give the staff time to talk, especially if it's a congressperson. We have 20 or 30 meetings with actual legislators scheduled. The actual number will have nothing to do with what's scheduled, but that's okay. But there is a great deal of interest on the Hill in actually talking to all of you. And if the member of Congress is on the call, you want to make sure you give him or her time to talk. So keep things brief, focus on what you're not going to say, get to the point, say it directly, and then move on. And that's it. I want to wish you all good luck. Thank you so much for volunteering to do this. We know this is a little bit out of some of your comfort zones, and it can be a little intimidating and scary. It should be a lot of fun. The staff want you to have fun. They want you to have a positive experience. You mess up things a little bit, you forget some things. That's not at all a problem. The important thing is that you're doing this, you're showing up for the meeting, and you're saying, Congressman, I'm an IEEE member and I have something important to say to you. Everything about after that, as long as you don't record it and you're not rude, is going to be great. And so with that, before I do, my email address, r.t.harrison@ieee.org. There's my phone number. I will be in the office Tuesday and Wednesday, so I'll be sitting by that phone all day or have it forwarded to my cell phone. If you have tech support, remember to contact Soapbox first, not me. The phone number is in your digital tool because I can't actually fix your meetings if something goes wrong. Soapbox can. If you have questions, concerns, anything else, as always, feel free to reach out anytime. And with that, let's go here. Walter and anybody else, if any of your meetings have not yet been scheduled, we will probably have them by the end of the day today. And like I said, a lot of the offices don't like scheduling things in advance. It's the way it goes. Your meeting should be scheduled. Your digital tool will be updated in real time. So just keep checking it, and it will be updated as soon as we get the meetings. At the end of the day, there will be a few meetings we don't get, maybe. Last year we got all of them. Usually we get close to all of them. We already know that there is one senator who simply said, no, I don't do constituent meetings, which is really weird, but okay, it's his office. Ed, you have a meeting Wednesday the 7th. Are you concerned about Wednesday or the 7th? Let me check that as soon as we get off the call. That seems a little weird. There are a few meetings that have fallen off of the 6th that will take place the 7th, the 8th, the 9th. And like I said, one of the meetings is going to be at the end of May. We understand you have schedules. We understand you have work. If you can't make one of those meetings, let us know. We can try to reschedule it. But if you can, meeting on Thursday, meeting on Friday, meeting next week is all good. We meet when the staff are available and we say thank you. Brendan, yeah. Let me send out all the Texas meeting links to you. Little hole in our planning here. You all have access to the contact for your teams, but for those of you from large states, getting access to everybody from your state is tricky. Brendan, I'll send you the Texas folks right after the call. Tom, the spreadsheet for IEEE members should be in the virtual tool. If it is not, I will make sure it is within an hour or so. So it should show up shortly. Most of the meetings actually are Wednesday, Howard, not Tuesday, but your schedule from Soapbox should be specific because some of them are on Tuesday. Most of them are actually on Wednesday the 6th. Some of them, as I said, have fallen into other days. Mark, let me reach out to you. Yes, you can. If you have contacts in some of the offices and want to help out, that would be great. Just make sure that Soapbox knows what you're up to. So if you schedule the meeting, you need to tell Soapbox so Soapbox can tell everybody else to be there. Eric, okay, so I'm hearing from a couple of you that the IEEE membership numbers are not in the digital tool yet. I will follow up with Soapbox right after this call. Making numbers. This is why we do these things, to find out what the problem is and where the problems are so we can fix them with plenty of time. So the Eric Berger question about asking OSTP to take on cybersecurity. OSTP is taking on cybersecurity. The Cyber Czar is supposed to be on top of this, and we will be reaching out to them for information on the budget and to work with them on improving it. The problem is we're not going to be doing that by Wednesday. And that's the problem we have with the president's budget. I suspect the administration has a plan on cybersecurity, and they have a strategy for making sure that everything is funded as it should be. We just don't know what it is yet. And so Aline works with OSTP all the time, but we just don't have it right for the moment. Yes, Howard, most of the meetings are, in fact, on Wednesday. The staff contact information should be available in your Soapbox tool shortly after your meetings. If, for whatever reason, Soapbox does not send you the contact information for the staff, feel free to reach out to me on Thursday or whenever, and we can get you that email. The issue here is that Soapbox does not want a lot of the participants to reach out to the staff prior to the meeting because staff is already committed to the meeting and they're busy. I don't think that would have been a problem with you guys, but some groups, they like to start conversations in advance, and we don't want that to happen until after you met with the staff, so they know who you are. IEEE and IEEE-USA, this is Mark's question about budget deficits and debt. We do not have a position on the debt or the deficit. The reason for that is simply that IEEE-USA tries to limit itself to issues that uniquely impact IEEE members and for which we have something unique to say, neither one of which is true with the deficit. However, part of the purpose of the CVD and these efforts is to teach IEEE members how to reach out to their legislators whenever they want. And it is certainly not our place to tell you what you should be concerned about. Mark, I know you're good at this, and you don't need our help learning how to talk to legislators, and we certainly appreciate your participating in this discussion and these events. But for folks who are not quite as versed in kind of this advocacy work, part of what we're doing is teaching them and teaching you how you can talk about whatever it is you're concerned about. And I know you're concerned about the deficit, and very politely and respectfully yelling at your legislators to do something about it is entirely appropriate. Although, just a reminder, these are team meetings, and the team does have certain things to cover, and you only have a limited amount of time. And so you can't make the meeting about the deficit, because there are other things to talk about too. Yeah, Cherie, focusing particularly on the competes bill, and I know you know that that's a big deal, and focusing on that is a good way to structure the meetings and give it some focus. Yeah, nuclear power is in the energy side of things. And as I mentioned in the training, mentioning that nuclear power is a good deal and mentioning that it's a good option. What I was hoping, Joe, is we could look at the president's budget and pull out some budget numbers focused just on nuclear. And it's in there, but we can't really figure out where exactly it is because the budget is so detailed. And the format that it came out in makes it hard to read, which makes it hard to give you a good number. Aline is talking about nuclear power. We are talking about nuclear power, and we may do additional communication on that down the line. The other thing to remember, Joe, is that Congress really hasn't started working on the FY 2023 budget. We have the president's budget request, but Congress really hasn't started. So we're going to have 8 months to communicate the importance of nuclear power to Congress, and we intend to do it. And you should definitely bring that up in your meeting because I know it's important to you. Yeah, Rob, just looking at your comment, just to remind all of you, these are not my meetings. They're your meetings. You got them because you are a voter, not because I asked for them, because I didn't ask for them. Soapbox did. We're recommending you focus on Competes and USICA because it's a big deal to the IEEE membership and to technology professionals across the country. But they are your meetings. And keeping in mind you have time constraints and can't go on for 2 hours, and you have teammates who also want to say things, mentioning things you're personally concerned about, even if they have nothing to do with IEEE, is perfectly acceptable. Following up the day after your meeting with the staff and saying, hey, we didn't have time to talk about it, but I'm worried about whatever it is you're worried about, is kind of the point of the setting up the CVDs. And if you want to set up another meeting next month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months from now with your legislators to talk about entirely different things or to talk about this again, that is the point of the CVD, one of the points of the CVD. So yes, certainly, if you have other things you want to talk about, you should do that at the appropriate time and in the appropriate amount of time. But that's kind of the point. These are your meetings. Take them in the direction you want to take them. Ed, I'm going to talk to Soapbox after this call about how we're doing on the digital tool. If people have opened the digital tool, we're probably okay. If they haven't, we're going to have a problem. And Mark, you know this, but I'm going to say it anyway just to remind everybody. We don't talk about elections in the meeting. Who should be voted out, who you're going to vote for, who you support, who you don't support. Certainly not who you're going to give campaign contributions to. That would be inappropriate and possibly illegal in the calls on Wednesday. And that is also an objective of our CVD, is that nobody commits a felony. That's kind of a big deal. All of the spreadsheets, Tom, are supposed to be in the digital tool, but it looks like the number of IEEE members per legislative district is not up yet. I will talk to Soapbox right after the call. I would actually rather not say who said they wouldn't do constituent meetings because I try not to embarrass legislators. The IEEE members who were supposed to have that meeting know what happened. But I don't want to name them publicly because I don't want to pick a fight with a member of the Senate. Oh, thank you, Lee. Kitchen upgrades are always unpleasant. I'm going through, finding questions here. I will send, Hugh, I will send an email to all the CVD participants with the conferees. Just a reminder, there's a reasonably good chance we won't have them by the end of the week. So if you don't get an email from me with the conferees listed, it's because they haven't been named yet. But as soon as we know them, I will send them out to you. Lee, it is always a good idea to mention who you work for. If you work for competing companies, that's fine. That's to be expected, actually. And Congress Congress knows that some of you don't agree on some of these issues, and some of you are working for competing companies. But the legislators need to know who you work for to help them understand what you do for a living. Now, of course, if you don't want to tell them for whatever reason, don't. That's fine. Though you should still tell them where you live and tell them what industry you're in. But there's nothing wrong with telling them who you work for. Yeah, the spreadsheet was also sent out as an attachment to an email, although it's supposed to also be in your digital tool. So I'll get to that, Walt. Tyler, you can always bring up IEEE-USA talking points, and we are always grateful when you do. You can also always use the leave behinds that we've sent out if they're useful, and share them with other IEEE members. You're gonna see a one pager on the budget appear in the digital tool shortly. If you want to use that in your meetings, that's fine. I always assume everything I send to you is public. I don't want to overwhelm you, and I don't want to overwhelm your meetings, which is why I'm not asking you share everything with the staffer. But if you wish to do so, particularly in the follow-up or in other meetings or in personal meetings you're having, that is always fine. And thank you. Yeah, James, always thought you had a cool name, by the way, James Rosenkrantz. I will send you your entire state delegation as well. Rob, I will check your schedule. I assume all the meetings should be on the 6th, unless it specifically says otherwise, since most of our meetings are on the 6th. But I will double check on your schedule in particular. But I believe they are on Wednesday. I'm not providing anything to Westinghouse Nuclear or any of your companies, simply because I don't talk to your companies. If you wish to pass information on to your companies, you should feel free to do so. Like I said, anything I send to you, you can use any way you want, unless I specifically say otherwise, which I hardly ever do. Somanath, you can participate in events like this. Excellent way to actually close out our session. You can take part in events like this by simply volunteering. I recommend that you listen into the legislative update that I give every other Thursday. Links are on the IEEE-USA webpage. There is not an update this week. There is one from last week that you can listen to, and there are updates next week, and then 2 weeks after that, and 2 weeks after that. I will let you know about future events through those events. Or you can participate in one or more of our IEEE-USA policy committees to help form the policies that we advocate for on Capitol Hill. All of you, all IEEE members in the United States are welcome to participate. But we do events like this, not regularly, but a couple times a year, and you are all welcome back to whatever you think would be fun and interesting and helpful to you. And with that, I have a bunch of follow-ups to give you. Feel free to continue feeding me questions as they come up. You can email them to me. You can call me anytime you want. I will be following my email as closely as I possibly can from now until the end of the week, when things start to return to normal. Again, thank you all for participating. Thank you all for volunteering. And I look forward to seeing all of you later on Wednesday. Have a great week. Good luck.